Yeah.
Because churches used to be open in those days. It was okay to leave a church open and not lose everything.
Yeah. They talked a little bit about some of the vandalism.
Yes, yes.
And two, it sounds as if at one point the church was only open, this was way back years and years ago, only open on Sunday mornings.
Probably.
And it wasn't really used. You ready? Okay. This isn't meant to be a loaded question, so hopefully it won't come across that way, but I'm just interested if there is one particular sermon, and maybe in your case, Bert, that you've preached or that you've heard here at Circular that really sticks in your mind, did something to you emotionally, personally, or that, you know, had an impact that sticks in people's memories. Any sermons in particular that...
One of Bert's sticks in my mind. It had to do with prayer. I don't recall the topic, but it had to do with prayer. And when I left that morning, I said to him, Bert, thanks a lot. You're going to help me change my prayer life. Because we call on God and kind of treat him like a kid, you know, not a kid, but, you know, the person who just kind of rains down everything on us. And I think he mentioned the fact about a lady who prayed for a parking spot. She believed so well, and I laughed and said, I'm one of those ladies who prays for parking spaces because it's desperate on Calhoun Street in the middle of the day if I'm not in one of those hospitals. So I too prayed for parking spaces. But that stuck with me because in my culture, we are taught to pray that God does everything. And my mother especially literally believed that God would take care of this when she said that. She really meant that God would, you know, come down and kind of, if you mess up your life, well, hey, God, you come on and take care of it. So these things, all this old dogma is still stuck inside you. And as you go along year to year and as you mature and grow, well, physically and mentally and emotionally, you realize that, you know, all I'm doing is manipulating God. And I think that was what the word that Bert used, manipulating God. And I thought, you know, yeah, sure, I do the same thing. I manipulate him too. He hears from me more often when I'm kind of down or I need some money or I need something or something's wrong with the automobile. He hears a lot more from me than just walking down the street even saying, just thank you for this gorgeous day. Just thank you for life itself, for being here, you know. So thanks, Bert.
I think I remember that one too.
You think you remember that one too? Yes, that one's going to be with me forever. And it has helped me to change my prayer life. I do take a much different look at prayer now. I'm very, very careful about how I pray. So it works. If you listen, if you pay attention, there's something there all the time. But that one stood out more.
Mary would know this too, but preaching is a way to work out your own stuff a whole lot. You know, it's just it's a real gift to be able to have a deadline. You know, to be forced to think through something, at least to the point of talking about it you know, by Saturday night when you go to bed.
Yes.
And so it has. It's really been a tremendous privilege for me. You know, I love doing it. It's not always fun at the time to struggle, but it really does help you to put things together.
I agree.
And for yourself.
Sure.
And that's been the way for me. I've heard other people preach for quite a number of times here, and I can think of the style of each one who has been here, and what I appreciated in them, but I'm not sure that I could name a specific sermon that I thought that I isolate from their influence on me, you know, in a more global sense.
Yeah, that's true. Each person has a
style, right?
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
A question came to mind as you were speaking. Both of you have preached. Do any particular kinds of reactions come to Is there one reaction to a sermon that, you know, I know there are probably many serious kinds of things that you might not want to share, but is there some kind of, does any story come to mind about a reaction to one of the things that you have said in a sermon?
I don't know. People usually just say, I enjoyed your sermon, or that was a good sermon. They very seldom throw anything back at you like, well, I heard what you said when you said such and such a thing. Because I think we really just don't know how to do that. But, excuse me, someone did say to me, you think I'm right?
Well, yeah, I've always had that problem because the preacher has said so much to me.
Yes.
And the best I can come out with is, I enjoyed the sermon.
Yeah, yes, that's right. That is what people do. That's what. Yes, and in as much as it does, because they're trying to do what you're trying to do. You're trying to remember everything. But I would just as soon have you. Toby Van Buren says I'm very analytical. I said, yes, Toby, I'm old. I have to look at all sides. But it is difficult for people to just try to get everything in. I feel good about it if you just get one thing that you think really, you know, would help you or help you to help someone else. And it's not always about, some folks would say, well, you know, you do it scripturally, somebody else will quote this one, but you will quote maybe Jesus, or, well, we all have different styles. And that's what sets us apart. That's what makes you want to hear me or Bert or Susan or whomever else, because none of us is the same. We're different people. And then, of course, I'm a woman, a female, and a woman of color, and that's where I come from. That is the side I bring it from. And the other people bring it from their stance. You know, when all is lost, you fall back on what you know. I try to leave out as much AME stuff as I can, but I was born there. You see, and a lot of that stuff is still with me. But I've got to know, you know, when I can cut it off, when I can use something else, or what have you. So it's more than just sitting up there on a Sunday morning, and I don't think I could do it as often as Bert or Susan, to sit there and say, well, this is okay to do, like he says. It's not fun. And I don't know how he feels about it, but of course I do have some anxiety before I get going. But once I get going, I've got to drop the anxiety because I have a job to do. So it's, you know, we're not here to entertain people, you know, and I think a lot of people think that. They think, oh boy, you know. But I don't feel that we are.
The kinds of responses, there are several kinds of positive response. One is that somebody just says, I enjoyed the sermon. And I think I know what they mean, because I say that myself sometimes when I hear other people give a sermon that I really liked. And you know, I can't remember specifically maybe anything from the sermon, but I remember my impression. And it was one, wow, you know, I was lifted, I was inspired, and so forth, but don't ask me to say back anything that was said. And that's one kind of thing, and I kind of appreciate that. But the thing that I like best are those times when we've had a sermon talk back after the service. Got a group of 6 to 12 people sitting around talking about the thing that the sermon addressed. And sometimes it starts where the sermon was, but always ends up with the subject matter rather than the sermon itself. And I then have the feeling that people were started on a process of thinking that was their own process, and it was theirs, it is theirs, and they're carrying it forward. And that's really what sermons are about. You know, it's not a polished product that you hand to somebody for them to admire, but it's rather planting some seeds. You know, it's getting your hands dirty and really digging in the dirt and trying to nurture the thought, the truth, the criticism in the good sense that's inside of them, so that they can take it and grow with it. And then when there's some indication that that's happening, which is sometimes, then that's what really makes me feel confirmed.
Sounds like we should do that more, to talk there.
Yeah, I think so.
Hasn't that been a summertime?
Well, we've done it in the summer
Tried it.
because we moved the service up to 10:15 so that it's over by 11:15 or thereabouts. And then that gives people time, or they feel that they have more time to, in a relaxed kind of way, to come back into maybe after the fellowship time and to talk together. Whereas, when at our regular time, the service is not over until 12 or 12:15, and then by the time you've greeted your friends, it's 12:30, and people are a little more reluctant to sit there for another 30 minutes to talk about the sermon because they want to go home and have lunch.
It's true.
Right. So maybe we ought to move our service up. In fact, one year,
That's nice.
I guess this
10:15.
was about maybe, I don't know if you don't remember it, it would be probably more than 5 or 6 years ago. We had our summer schedule, first time we did it, moved the service up to 10:15 on Sunday morning. And then afterward, at 11:30, we had, for the adults, a sermon talk back, and for the children, 30-minute Sunday school over in Lance Hall. And it worked so well that come September, we decided just to keep it that way for the year. So we left the service at 10:15 during the regular part of the year, and continued in that pattern through the next summer. And by that time, people thought, well, maybe we ought to go back to the old way and see how that works for a while. So that September, we went back to the 10 o'clock Sunday school and 11 o'clock church service. And since then, we've only done the 10:15 services in the summertime. But, the question comes up every year, should we, if it worked, should we keep it? Maybe we
Sounds
should.
good to me.
We can be
I'm
flexible.
up anyway.
Yeah.
Just alternate years.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's great. It's nice.
I know that Circular has, at least since I've been here, it seems that we always have so many social events, gatherings for this, that, and the other, opportunity to get together, to celebrate, to say goodbye, to say hello, for a variety of reasons. Are there any social events that you remember as being just ones that you'll never forget, or that really stand out in your memory?
Yeah, Bert's party, Bert's dinner, Bert's 20-year dinner, the trip before they went on the trip to France.
Yeah.
That was really neat.
Certainly
because
memorable for me.
wasn't it? I bet it was. But the food was a little different, and the extra touches with the garnishes and all that really made it neat. And Mary Jane did all the napkins, the floral napkins and stuff. Really looked very professional and very nice. And I think we were all really excited that night. Yeah.
And for the camera, what was all that about?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was about, we had a 20-year anniversary dinner for Bert and Lucille, and they were going to take a trip to France. We gave them a trip to France. It was a gift that we gave them, and we had the dinner for them, the congregation. Yes. 1992?
I think so.
Yes. Summer of 92. It was great.
Yeah, it was really a great
It was a
time.
big affair. It was really neat. Wonderful.
Social event that stands out for me is my wedding. Yeah, I got married here in '78, and we were married on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, and invited, of course, the whole congregation, people that I knew at the medical school, and Lucille had been working for the News and Courier at that time, so she had a lot of friends there, and a lot of family on both sides, especially hers. And it filled up the church. It was packed with people. And the church gave us a reception as a wedding present over in Lance Hall. They had prepared 2 turkeys, not including me, and a ham, and all kinds of sandwiches and goodies and so forth. And of course, at that time of morning, it was about noon by that time, so it was people's lunch, and it was prepared as such. And it was really a great time. They packed the hall. There were more people there than I'd ever seen before. One church member, Lee Finkley, actually fell through the floor. The floor gave way, and he went down to the subfloor.
One ham sandwich too many.
One ham sandwich too many. But he was not hurt. And but it was really a great time. Went on to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we had planned, there was so much food. We were planning to have a little 4-day honeymoon down at a plantation on the Combee River that belonged to a friend of Lucille's father. And there was no restaurants or anything around there. It was just way out in the sticks. So we were going to take what was left of the food from the reception to eat during the time that we were down at the plantation. And at the end of the day, the only thing that was left from that groaning board were some bourbon balls that somebody had made. So all we got from the whole thing was a little tiny box of bourbon balls to take with us on that. Didn't last very long at all. But that was a great it was an event that I will never forget, and it was just a very generous outpouring of love on the part of the congregation.
Yes.
But there have been others as well. One of the nicest that I recall was the banquet that we had in connection with the capital funds drive that we did around 1985, I suppose. The second one after the Tricentennial. It was the second phase of the Tricentennial Fund, when we were raising money to do various things around the church that needed to be done at that time. And we decided, rather than to do the social event like we usually do, which is a potluck in Lance Hall, to do it up right. And we went down to the Mills House Hotel. This was before the days of the Omni. Mm-hmm. And the Mills House was the hotel in town. Yeah. And they catered a dinner after church for, I guess there must have been about 100 to 120 people who went down, and this was the kickoff for the capital funds drive. And the reason it impressed me was, number one, it's the first time that we had ever really moved uptown, and done something that looked really professional. And the second thing is that various people did skits, and they were the greatest skits. They should have been recorded. But the most memorable one was Mike Marcel doing an imitation of Vernon Elliott and the organ. This was during the time of that Vernon was restoring this pipe organ, and Mike did a parody of Vernon, and it was absolutely hilarious. Couldn't have been improved on. We've been begging him ever since to do it, but he's always refused. I think it was just that one inspired moment. So that was a memorable social event, I think.
I would love to have seen that.
You must do it for those of us who didn't see that, right? Yeah. That's nice.
So you're the third person today that has been married in this church.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of neat.
How about
Do you have
that?
any other questions? Some of these questions that we have, I think Bert may have, but I'm not sure that Mary has been here long enough to have seen a trend or change, particularly regarding the involvement of circular in community activities and community programs coming to circular and being welcomed here. Have you, well, either one of you really, have you seen?
Well, the change that I've seen the most since I've been here is the growth. The church is steadily growing. People are joining church by the 15 and 20s. And someone said one day, let's pray for all these babies that are hatching around here. It tells me we've got to still have a young church. And the Sunday school is, you know, the children just suddenly everybody's on shoulder level with me now. The ones that used to be down near my hips. So they have really, you know, everybody now has a sister or brother. And it's growing fast. I've seen that. I've seen. Community stuff, well, with the racism committee, we've been trying to work in the community, working with Zion Olivet together, trying to do something about racism. Maybe not in our lifetime, but hopefully we'll be able to contribute something that would help.
Is there not an event coming up?
Tomorrow night, Wednesday night, yeah. It's going to have, we had a potluck supper and sing-along at Zion Olivet a few months ago. And we talked about, on the racism committee, we talked about doing it more. It was said that maybe we should do it once a month. I didn't think that was a very good idea because then you just tire out too fast for that. Months fly by so quickly, you know. So I think maybe every quarter we may consider it. But I believe now that we've established the sister church, that we have a relationship with the racism committee, that we can now move on to perhaps smaller groups and go out and really begin to do things. Sort of cut the cord now and just branch out. I think we had a little case of nerves about doing that. We wanted to kind of always stay together so we have each other to lean on. But there are risks in life and we have to be able to take those risks. And this is one of them. It's not very popular. It's not a popular idea not to, you know, get involved with certain things. But you've got to start somewhere. Somebody's got to do it. So we're trying. A for effort. I think Circular is doing a good job.
Yeah, I think that this is a continuation of the kind of social interest that the church has had since as long as I've been acquainted with it. I mentioned already the outreach with the street people in the late 60s and the early 70s. I think at that time too, you know, when Bob resigned from the church around 1973, he stayed as the director of the Marriage and Family Counseling Center of Circular Church, which at that time was the only marriage and family counseling that was done that we were aware of on a sliding scale that would be open to people in the community who couldn't afford to pay a private counselor. And this was considered by the church to be a ministry. The church was involved in it. Several in particular. Kay Sharp was working with the center to a certain degree, and several of the other people in the congregation. And that continued mainly throughout the 70s. And during that time too, you know, there were other things that were taking place. One was the church's reception of the People Against Rape, or PAR organization, when they were just getting started and didn't have a headquarters. The church provided office space to them at no charge here in our building, and they were with us for several years until they outgrew the space that we were able to make available to them. And later, when the Charleston Interfaith Campus Crisis Ministry was started, they likewise needed an office space. So we gave them the same space that we had lent to PAR. And they were here for several years using that space, again at no charge. I think they may have helped with the utilities, but they were not charged rent until they could get on their feet and move to a place that met their needs better. I think, too, of the church's role in the foundation of the hospice of Charleston, which actually started here in the sanctuary. There were members of the church at one of our annual retreats at Bonnie Doon who had done goal setting that year, and we set as our priority for the year the foundation of a hospice in Charleston. So we started having some meetings. The first one was actually over in Lance Hall, and it was just church members. There were about 15 people who were mainly involved with health professions themselves, and had a man who was in town for another purpose from Chicago, who had been involved himself in hospice work in Chicago. This was around 1978, I suppose. And we had him in as a consultant, and he energized us. So we had a public meeting and invited people from the community to come and to talk about a hospice in Charleston. And we had a series of these public meetings, and then organized out of that a steering committee of people who were interested. And at that time, most of the members of the steering committee were church people. Bill and Elaine Simpson, for example, were on it. Bill Wilson, myself, and a few other people. And we hired part-time an executive director, and she helped the organization get incorporated and begin to expand to the point that we were ready to begin seeing patients. And by that time, it had grown to the point that the church really didn't need to parent it any longer. And it became a freestanding, independent, eleemosynary institution. But this church continued to furnish members of its board of trustees and volunteers. Angus Baker was the medical director for a number of years. Henry Smythe was on the board and gave legal assistance to hospice, and so forth. So for the first probably 10 or 12 years of its existence, this congregation really shepherded it along and helped it get started. And there were several other such organizations. Hotline, which is going strong today and has been for 25 years. Its first home was in the basement of Lance Hall. That's where the first telephones were installed. And it got its start here. So I think of Circular as a kind of a greenhouse, in a way, to help things that need to be done get started and grow to the point that they really do take on a life of their own and can exist more as adults, in the community. And then the church lets them go and moves to something else that we see as needed. I think that's been a pattern, and a pattern that I've appreciated with the congregation. It's a pattern that works for us because we're not such a large congregation as to be able to maintain sponsorship of various ministries or programs in the community. But we have been effective, I think, in helping them get started, either things that we have started ourselves or that have looked to Circular for help at a very early stage of their own development.
Oh, that's interesting. And one question we can ask you is what the community has perception of Circular Church is. As a wide community.